put your phones on mute and your everything on mute until it's your time to speak, that'd be great. Okay, Mr. Rittenhouse. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 1 March 2021 special meeting of the Akron Board of Education. We're excited to have you join us today. Thank you for joining us. We'll start off with roll call. Mrs. Ryman.
Dr. Akbar.
Here.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Miss Autry.
Here.
Mr. Bravo.
Present.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Miss Mansfield.
Here.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Here.
All present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryman. We want to thank everyone for joining us today and hanging in there. We had a few technical difficulties, so that delayed our meeting a little bit. But we're here and going to go ahead and get started. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask to render that for us, please.
Sure, absolutely. All right. Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you also for your service. And so we're going to go ahead and go to the next agenda item, which is the main focus of today's meeting, which is the superintendent search. We have with us today Mr. Steve Horton, who's our consultant from Ohio School Board Association, leading our superintendent search process. And so I want to turn it over to Steve to lead us in the discussion around what process we'll follow for our interview process with our candidates.
Thanks,
So Steve.
Can everybody hear me okay?
I cannot. I heard you say something, but I don't know what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hopefully this work out okay in terms of the audio. This is an important meeting for us because we need to be able to come together and finalize some final details on how we move forward. At this point, we're at a place with our application recruiting is closed. And so that application pool is set. It looks like a pretty strong pool. I don't know how many of you have been able to log in yet, if you've tried yet, but there you have 28 candidates in the pool to look at. And I think some of them are some pretty strong candidates. You know, we won't talk about any of those people tonight, but that's where we are in terms of the recruiting process that just closed. I want to talk about specifically interviews that we have scheduled for March 23rd and 25th. Those are our first round interviews. And then I want to also talk about a couple things. One is getting second round interview dates finalized, formalized. We talked about time frame, but we never actually set an actual date. We are waiting until now to get those set. So we need to do that tonight. And then talk in detail about the format, especially for the second round. The first round, as I described it here, is pretty well set, very tightly scripted. So I'm going to go back to the 23rd and the 25th, the first round. I think the first question I need to ask all of you, and the thing that we need to get settled because it was not certain as of the end of last week, is whether or not we're going to hold those interviews with the candidates in person or virtually.
So is that a question or are you opening
yes,
it?
that
I'm
is a
sorry.
question.
Okay. So this is for the second round, correct?
No, we're talking about the first round.
That you're
The ones that we're going to do on the
got it.
21st, 3rd, and the 25th. There was indication that they may be virtual, and I don't know if that is still the case, but we need to get that finalized.
So any comments on that from the board? We want to make that decision today. You can line up in the chat or raise your hand. Bravo.
Is it possible to allow, because I'm sure we can accommodate space-wise, is it possible to allow folks that would prefer to attend in person, and those that may need to or want to attend those interviews remotely, allow them to do that as well? Or is it preferable to be all of one or all of the other?
I would think the preference would be to be all of one or all of the other. And of those two, I haven't met a candidate yet that doesn't want to meet with the board in person. I always, in the past, have offered that, at least since we've been in the pandemic, as an option to meet virtually if it's a situation where they're not going to be comfortable. But, you know, everybody I've talked to so far really wants to meet in person. I think in terms of the board, it is important that you do it all one way or the other, just for the sake of consistency and ability to put it together.
Just to follow up, Dr. Akbar, if I might. Mr. Horton, I hear you, though the only thing I would suggest is that whether it's first round or second round, and without discussing anything that shouldn't be discussed in open session, we may have some folks who may need to or want to attend these remotely, and I think we should respect that, but still provide some avenue if folks would like to do this in person. And I don't want us, I would not like to see us ask questions or call anybody out on the spot either. I think, I just want to throw that out there. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. I think there are some of us who may be comfortable and may be willing to meet in person. And there may be some of us who cannot or should not. And so I think we should respect that. So I just want to throw that out there. And maybe we just have to kind of adjust a little bit since we're not exactly out of abnormal times right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So any other questions?
I'll jump in real quick. I think that I agree with Patrick. I think that if we do have to have some folks virtual and some folks in person, if we still keep our Chromebooks in front of us so that we can still have that interaction as well, I think that that's helpful so that it does level the playing field a little bit, but it still allows for that interaction a little if we can. One thing I absolutely can't stand is when you've got one group that's in person and there's like 8 of them in a room and there's like a camera off in the corner and you can't really see their face. And I've been in a couple meetings like that and the rest of you are like this. And then they've got those people that you're shooting from across the room. I don't want one of our board members or 2 or 3 or whoever can't be in person to be, looking at the side of the rest of us or something. Just trying to keep it as level as possible if we are hybrid, so to speak.
Yeah, I do agree that if there is going to be a hybrid situation, that everybody needs to be visible to everybody else.
So I think that's a question and something we have to decide. Everyone likes to be on camera, and some of it has to do with broadband capabilities, having too many cameras on in Zoom meetings or virtual meetings in one household. I just want to there that those things are also things that we weigh, our members weigh. And so we may need to just consider that as well. And I'm saying that because I'm the only one in my house, but my broadband acts shoddy a lot of times. So it's something that we have to deal with.
Okay.
So any other comments?
I just meant in particular, I just hate when it's shot from across the room. I just think it takes, even if I'm looking at somebody's avatar person or their picture, at least I'm not looking at their shoulder from 18 feet away. I don't know. It seems weird, but it's one of those Zoom pet peeves.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're referring to like if we were in the boardroom and the camera was just in the boardroom and not in front. Yeah. That makes sense. You might have a comment, but I could be wrong. I might be misreading that.
No, I do. So, assuming that we would have those logistical things in place to make sure we can see the candidates, I think it's important that we just have that option. I know Mr. Horton said, we should maybe consider doing it all one way or the other, but I mean, again, we're still in the pandemic, at least with the first round. I think options should be available to do either way, with, again, assuming that we have all the logistics worked out so that we can actually see the candidate on camera should they choose virtual.
Agreed.
Okay. And I'm perfectly willing to get together with your technical person to make sure that the details are worked out on that. Do we think at this point that you want to have the candidates come in and be in person, or would they attend the interview virtually?
What are your thoughts?
I feel like we should offer them the opportunity. I don't want them to feel unduly pressured, or I wouldn't want them to feel unduly pressured to be in person, but if they're willing to, but maybe we make it clear that, choosing not to be in person would not be, negatively reflect on their interview or anything like that.
I agree with Patrick. I think let them have that choice because maybe they have reasons not to meet in person yet too. So I think allow them that opportunity, but again, make sure that it's not going to penalize them somehow if they don't show up in person.
Okay.
It sounds like what I think I'm hearing is that we would offer a hybrid option or in-person option if they wanted it.
Yeah, depending on comfort level.
Yeah. That would lead to the second round. That same question about the second and final round, correct?
I mean, it would, yeah. Ultimately, we need to make that decision. That's a little farther away. I don't know if we feel more comfortable by that point or not. That's hard to say at this time.
Right. I would like to open that discussion up, if possible, if we could make that decision today so that we know exactly how our interviews are going to go. That would be pretty good. Heard. Ms. McKittrick, then Mrs. Autry.
So the second round interviews begin in April, correct?
We are looking at the week of April 5th. Yeah, it would be that first week of April.
Okay. By then, I think I would be comfortable meeting in person. So that's just me. But I will go along with whatever the board decides. But just I'll put it out there that I would be comfortable meeting in person by then, but I will go along with whatever everybody wants.
Thank you very much. Ms. Autry?
Yeah, I think for that second round, I would really like to see the candidates and us in person, if at all possible. Unless there's just a strong consensus against that, but definitely for the second round. And we need to know what those potential candidates' restrictions are going to be at that point, because if our students are coming in person in the fall, I mean, we need to know if our superintendent's going to be able to do that, if there are restrictions that they might have that we need to know about at that point. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander.
I was just thinking and listening to everybody speak, and I think that the first round, I think, would be, we could do hybrid, whichever way we want, let people be virtual as well as be there. But I do agree with the second round, and Ms. McKittrick said that she's able to make it, and I'm sure others might be able to make it. I would be willing to come in April in person, and I would like to see the candidates, the final candidates especially, in person, because that we're making a decision at that point in time where it's a do or die, and it's not going to be, you don't see this person, you don't know what they look like, you don't know anything about them other than what you see virtually. So I would be willing to be there in person the second time for sure. First time I might be there, first time too, I don't know, but at this point I know for sure second.
Thank you. So if I'm reading the tea leaves,
Actually, can I jump in?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You, Dr. Hall.
You're fine. You're fine. No, I was just say too that, like, as far as the second round and then being in person, I think, and it's just, I'm just thinking out loud here. But I think it would depend upon how many moving parts there are for the second round, right? So are they going to come and do all the interviews all in one day, or is this a process where they might have, interviews over the course of 2 days? So, because again, that may, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'm fine for, to come for an in-person, but it's another thing to say, oh, well, by the way, you're going to be in town for a couple of days interviewing with multiple people, maybe in multiple venues. So again, if that's not what we're planning to do, then I'll, withdraw the query. But I think, if we're talking about at some point trying to have, candidate forums and, where they maybe get in front of like parents or teachers or stakeholders. I can't imagine that we'd be able to do all that in one day. I mean, maybe we can, but I'm just thinking that it could stretch over more than one day, and that may impact some people's risk thresholds. But anyway, so just food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other comments?
Dr. Agbar, I have one other comment. I was thinking, when we do the second round, it depends on how many candidates we're going to interview. If we're going to interview 8 candidates, I wouldn't want to interview all 8 at the same time. That's a long day, and it will be exhausting for them as well as us. And I think I would rather do something like that in a 2-day period. And if they're going to be other people there, I think that would be even a better move to do 2 days versus 1, because if they're going to be meeting with some people in the community and some stakeholders, that's a long day as well. And so we might have to, depending on how many candidates we look at, do it within a 2-day period.
Yeah, and I agree that
in favor of in-person.
Okay. So it sounds like for the second round, we're all moving towards in person. Is that correct? To that. All right. Doesn't sound like it. So it sounds like we've made 2 decisions for you, Steve. At this point, we haven't. I don't think we need to take an official vote. Consensus on those 2.
the first one will be set up as a hybrid event, and that the second one you would like to do in person with the candidates.
Yes.
Okay.
But probably, and I'm sure this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, it would obviously be a good idea, just in case, to have everything set up and prepared in the event that both need to be remote.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Agreed. Okay.
Okay.
Steve, I know you have a few other items.
Okay, I want to go back to the first round for a minute here and tie up some things there, and then we can go back to the second round and talk about actual process with those. Dr. Akbar, you had suggested maybe some different locations for the first round interviews. Obviously, if we're going to have people in the room, if there's a potential for that, and candidates coming into the district and being live, we want to leave for social distancing. So I'll let you take the lead as far as what the location should be.
So I think that's something that the board can decide. We haven't decided on our candidates yet. I don't know, where we. I think we have 28 candidates thus far. So, it may be wise to have the meetings at the administration building, or if we have candidates coming from out of town, maybe it's a location near the airport. But I mean, we have a whole bunch of other options as well, since we're all going to be in person. Is there a bigger room across the city where we can do that on the table? Any suggestions from any board members beyond the two that I already shared? Minor concerns about doing it in the boardroom, but I think we probably could space out like in the op center or somewhere else in the administration building.
That's what I was going to say. I think the Art Center, and then I have one that I can talk to you about offline. That's a potential possibility if we need another space, but I'd prefer to mention it first offline. So, but there is another one. Then I'm sure we've also got space too that we could talk to our partners at the city and the county about as well. Like the third floor training spaces up at the Russell M. Pry building or something like that, that you can really space people out pretty far apart.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I thought about is maybe even partnering with LeBron James Family Foundation and doing it at their hometown center. That might be actually a nice D as a interview and showcases one of our partnerships.
And we could also check to see what the convention center has going on as well.
The LeBron location is an interesting thought. What's the name of that location?
I think it's just called Hometown Hall. I'm not 100% sure, but it's not the new one yet because I don't think it's open. I'm referring to the one on the University of Akron's campus in InfoCision.
Okay.
And there too, be able to talk to them. We have the space at Akron Early College. We have Central Howard that we could probably talk to our folks about, and also one of the ballrooms at U Akron if need be.
kind of like the Akron with the LeBron James piece. That would be good because there's two of our partners, LeBron James and the University of Akron. You know, two partners that we have, so we can showcase both at the same time.
Definitely sound like we have some options. Anyone else? Any other feedback, thoughts? I'm not hearing any, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Steve.
Okay.
You have a few options to explore.
Okay. All right, then I will circle back with you on those, and so we can make a final decision before that time.
And
as
Ruth,
far as, I'm sorry.
Ruth can help us determine whether they're available.
Yeah.
And what it costs and logistical, what it would take to make the logistics happen for the hybrid interviews as well. So she can help us manage that as well. So
Okay. That would be, that was my concern with the off-site locations that were suggested. So, okay. The typical format in the first round interviews, did all of you get the script that I sent out, that template with the questions?
Yep.
Good. I just want to make sure that you know that that's my draft based on what I heard and saw in the focus groups, the surveys, as well as the Zoom meetings that we had, conversation I had with you at the very beginning, just to try and craft questions. The idea of the first round is we want for each of you, and I'd like for each of you to ask 2 questions each in a round robin fashion. These interviews work best when all the candidates hear the same questions and you hear them respond to those questions. It allows you to compare apples to apples much more easily in that first round. So that part of it is pretty clearly set. Typically, we would shoot for 6 to 8 first round candidates out of that pool. That would be the normal number. That works well for the 2 nights that we have set for the 23rd and the 25th. And keep in mind as well that we also had the 16th the week before set as an optional date, although that's pretty far removed from the other 2 dates in terms of time frame if we have to go to that. But it is possible to do 4 interviews. We set them on the hour. So what we had talked about in our initial planning meeting was to start at 5:30. So that would be 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 if we did 3 interviews on each of those nights. And it is possible that we could add a 4th interview to one of the nights or 2 of the nights. It makes it a little more grueling for you guys, but that absolutely is a possibility to do. So that part of it is pretty straightforward. And then we can talk about, whether you want me to be on site with the candidates, or if this is going to be hybrid, where I would be. Oftentimes, the boards take the first round interviews and I'm not there. It just depends on how you feel about that and whether or not you want me there. I certainly can be. But that would be the format and the time frames that we talked about. Is there any questions or input on that part?
So the only thing I have a question about is when do you want feedback regarding the questions? I know I have a few items of feedback or suggestions.
Sure.
But I want to know, when do you want it by so that we all are under that timeline? We know when to get it back to you.
Yeah, we have time to get those back at this point. So if possible, I would like to have your edits or thoughts, whatever you want to add in terms of the questions, back to me maybe beginning of next week, next Monday. Would that work for everybody?
Does that work? Anyone have a challenge with next Monday? Okay, I don't see anyone saying that that's a challenge, so
Okay.
we'll provide that to you by Monday. Sorry, Dr. Hall.
No, I just was confirming that Monday is just for getting feedback on the questions, right? That was it.
Yeah.
Okay. Roger
Yes.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, it was not my intention for the questions that I sent you to be the final version, period. That is a draft that you're welcome to make any suggestions on the questions I've given you. If you would like to reword or insert something or write your own question, that's fine. Just so we all know that we can get everybody on the same page in terms of what each member is going to ask. And the other part of that too is we want to make sure that within that hour we have the opportunity for each of you to ask your 2 questions. So I intentionally did not give you each questions that I thought would be lengthy for each question, if that makes sense, for each one of you in terms of the answers that the candidates give you.
Yeah, and that's fine. Yeah, I mean, like Dr. Akbar, I know I've got some feedback on several of the questions as well, so I'll make sure I get that funneled to you.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'm fine with my questions. I've read them. I don't have any problem with the questions that I'm asked to ask.
Okay, great. If that's the case, then great. Let me know that, or let me know what you would like to change, so that I can get that together and back to you, and we can make sure that everybody's good with the final version. At which point, then I would get that to Ruth to make sure that you have, for those of you that will be in person, that we have copies of the template for each of you, for each one of the candidates.
Sounds good.
Okay. So,
sorry, Mr. Bravo had a question.
Yeah, just a quick question, and maybe I lost this in translation. If I did, I apologize. When will we know for sure which of the 3 dates that we have reserved, the 16th, the 23rd, and 25th, if we're using 1, 2, or all 3 of those? Did I miss that? Are we for sure using all 3, or we may end up throwing 1 or 2 of them out?
I think we are for sure going to use 23 and 25. Those were the main dates that were set. The 16th was an overflow day, an optional day in case we need more than the 6 to 8 interviews, which is possible. We won't know that for sure until after the 11th, when we have our screening meeting.
Okay.
Because that's when we're going to look at the candidates, have the discussion about the candidates, make decisions on who's going to move forward to the first round.
And that seems like a tight turnaround to make that decision maybe on the 11th and then ask them to be here on the 16th, but I suppose that's doable.
That is tight.
Yeah.
It is tight. I agree to that. The original screening meeting was going to be on the 8th. So yeah, moving it to the 11th does tighten up that time frame. It would mean that my calls to schedule with the candidates would happen first thing Friday morning on the 12th, so that we could work that out. And if we use the 16th as an interview date, those would be the ones that I want to try and fill first, just to make sure that we have candidates that are available and they understand that turnaround.
Hey, Steve, just got a question for you. So with regard, so there's not just the issue of the days, but also the time slots. I did have a thought as I looked through the pool of questions for first round interviews. The first thought I had was that there's no way that you finish this interview in an hour, not with that question volume. So I didn't know, is the plan? I mean, and I'm not advising that we narrow the question pool. I mean, I think I like the general overall content. I've got some feedback, but overall I like the content. I'm just thinking that I don't know that we ask 15 questions, in an hour. I don't know that that's realistic, so we're scheduling people, from 6:30 to 7:30, 7:30 to 8:30. These feel like more like 90-minute interviews to me as opposed to an hour, but that's just based off my prior experience with interviewing people. You can typically get to about 6 to 7 questions in an hour with a panel. So 15, it's more like an hour and a half conservatively.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that went through my mind as I was writing the questions. But my experience is that when I lead interviews, like in the candidate forums and that kind of thing, and we ask questions of the candidates, we typically get to quite a few of those questions, at least 11 or 12 of them, easily in an hour time slot. So then one of the things that I always share with the candidates is, be direct and succinct with your questions. It's not set up as a time to spend a lot of time talking on a subject, but be very direct with it.
Just throw something else out too. If we're changing up our procedures a little bit, both for first and second round interviews are going to be in person. There's going to be some COVID procedures, and to Dr. Hall's point, just in timing, we need to leave enough room on either side of the candidates for, just switching out candidates, giving board members a few minutes of a comfort break, giving us a chance if they're sitting in the same spot to clean and disinfect where they're sitting, and just random things like that you wouldn't normally have to think about or do that we might have to think about this time. But just adding on to what Dr. Hall said there.
Well, to that point, so I agree with that, with everything that Mr. Brown has laid out. To that point, getting back to where we do the interviews, is it possible to maybe have, multiple rooms that are set aside that the board just gets up and moves from room to room? So the candidates would go to, so candidate A is in room A, and then we get done, we just move to room B, while someone disinfects and cleans room A, we're now in room B with the next candidate. So it helps to trim some of that time off, but just throwing it out there is maybe something else to think of that may help to trim some of that time down. But anyway, that's my thoughts.
I appreciate that thought, but hope is, if possible, we can get a room big enough and we know how many candidates are coming, and we can possibly have different tables and different chairs for them in the front of the room where they can sit, and they just swap the table and chair out. You don't have to continue to move. So I think there are some things we can do, or we can just sanitize the table, and then move a new chair there, and call it, in that process. But I don't know if we want to do all the moving of the rooms, especially since we'll probably, as we discussed, be both virtually with some candidates and in person with others.
Yeah.
So we can also work with doing the schedule to where a person is in between the in-person person, so that sanitize while we're moving on to the virtual person. So logistical ways we can work that out without having to move room.
Yeah, there's opportunity for that to work. I do think it would work better for the board to be in one place, and the traditional format to bring the candidate to you. In all the searches that we've done since the lockdown and the pandemic happened, that has been the format, and we've been able to do them in rooms that were large enough that there was plenty of social distancing, the ability to do that safely, obviously with masks and sanitizing station each time.
Yeah. Feedback on that?
Basically, what you're saying is that there's not time for me to shower in between each in-person interview. That was a joke. That was a joke. Come on, guys. Lighten it up. Come on, let's lighten it up a little bit. You guys look way too serious.
I'm laughing.
A bit. Dr. I saw your face. That was hilarious. Your expression.
It's like, really? You take a shower in between?
Yeah, I know. I think I was being serious for my second. That was the funniest part about it.
Do you work
That's how I was envisioning the military tent setup outside, where you go outside and get sprayed down and then come back in. So in terms of the times, I'm also open to adjusting the time in terms of allowing more time in between. Is it possible, given that we started at 5 o'clock tonight, is it possible for you to start at 5 o'clock on the interview nights?
Possibly. For me, it just really depends on if we have the dates early enough, and as if it's a day I work in Kent or at home. But and the time's early enough, I should be able to get the whole time off. So
yeah, well, in terms of the dates, the 23rd and the 25th are the ones that we had set. So that's what I have on the calendar for me, and I have not changed them from that.
Yeah, I can certainly meet at 5. I could meet earlier if needed. I'll take some time off if I need to for this, especially if it means that we can start a little bit earlier and maybe not end so late either.
yeah.
But to Dr. Akbar's point, the earlier we make that decision, the better for everyone, because my calendar fills up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're asking about meeting at 5, I'm assuming that's the 23rd and the 25th, right? Those are the 2 days. We're not referring to the 16th.
Yes, the 23rd and the 25th, and well, the 16th as well, potentially.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean the 25th, I already have something scheduled. The 25th that goes till 5. But I can inquire to see if maybe I could scoot out just a little bit early to make 5 o'clock work. So I'll inquire about that.
It's good for me.
5 works for me.
Good at 5.
We'd have to move instructional policy on the 16th, but that shouldn't be too big of a deal. We could just talk to Ellen about that. But other than that, 5's good.
Okay. Because I think what I would suggest then is adjusting the time. If we start the first one at 5 o'clock, starting the second one at 6:15, and then starting the third one at 7:30. So it gives us a little bit more breathing room there.
Question.
So, question. I think somebody else might have had a question too. So let me go.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mr. Alexander, sorry.
So, what happens if we do get through the questions? Because I know when we did the interview for the treasurer, we did 2 rounds a piece as well, and we probably went about 45 minutes or so per candidate. Because some candidates might not have a whole lot to say, and if they're done early, maybe we can start the next one early. That's a possibility as well.
If they are there, it's a possibility, absolutely.
Right, if they're there and ready to go.
Or you end up with a little bit more downtime in between. Because you're right, some interviews are going to go faster than others. And for some candidates, if you can't get all the way through the questions because you're talking a lot, sometimes that's what it comes down to at the end of the time frame. Although it is our goal, and we typically have no problem getting all the questions in.
Right, because we should be more or less asking questions, not doing the talking. Let them do the talking to us, so we can hear what they're talking about. So we should just be asking the question and getting responses from them. We shouldn't have a whole lot of discussion in between, really.
Correct. Yeah.
Agreed. I did have a question or a point. And I forgot what it was. So when I think about it, I'll share it again. Any other comments for Steve, Mr. Bravo?
Yeah, I like where Steve's headed with the scheduling. I think it'll be a lot easier once we have that meeting next week to start narrowing the candidate list down, because we might find that instead of 6, we're with 8, and maybe we're tightening things up just a little bit to do 4 and 4. I really think that overflow day, although it's there if we really need it, I think we should do our best to try and stick with the 23rd and 25th, because making a decision on the 11th, not contacting someone until at least the 12th to let them know that we need them there on the 16th is just cutting it a little tight. Seems like the overflow date should have probably, but I also get that we were supposed to do the meeting a little sooner, but just my thoughts. I think it'll be easier to schedule once we know we've narrowed down the list, and I really think we should try and stick to the 23rd and 25th, or pick an overflow date that's maybe after that. 16th is just close.
I was going to suggest potentially the after that as well, Mr. Bravo, but the problem that we want to be aware of is if we do the second round interviews the week of April 5th, and I want to avoid pushing those back too far in our scheduling, we'll need to pick something at the beginning of the week of the 29th, because there is work that happens in between in terms of reference calls. I have the finalist candidates take our achiever assessment, and we get those reports to you because we want to have them to you before the second round. So we want to make sure that we scheduled it in a way that we aren't making it too tight between the first round and the second round.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Quick comment. My suggestion would be, if we're going to try and have interviews on the 16th, that maybe we would, if we have any local candidates, we would slide those into that first slot, because they wouldn't have the transportation issues if there are some who are closer to us than others.
It does leave the option open for that. And I honestly, as I'm looking at it, when I schedule the interviews, I try to look at it from a geographical standpoint in terms of the dates and where people are coming from and the times. So, that potentially works as well.
The candidate in Portland
we don't
is
know
going to have a little bit farther travel, obviously, than someone who's in Ohio. So
right.
If the folks in Ohio, maybe if we have to use that third date, that first date, we slide the people in who are closer and save those other dates for the people who are coming farther away.
Yeah. I mean, potentially that works, but the complication is we don't know who those candidates are yet.
Right. Right. So, appreciate that. Any other comments? I remember what mine was. Is it possible for that second day, or maybe the first day? I can't remember which people said they had meetings. Is it possible that one of those days we could start earlier than 5? And then the day that we can't start until after 5, then we just.
I would certainly be open to that. I think that also means that if we needed to, we could slide in a couple of extra candidates and maybe not need an overflow date. But I also recognize that it may be difficult for some folks to take off. So again, probably to your point earlier, Dr. Akbar, the sooner we know that, the better, or make that decision. But I would be happy to start earlier than 5 if we could and fit in a few more candidates.
Yeah, on the 23rd, I could start as early as 1 o'clock that day if we needed to start as early as 1 o'clock on that day. On the 25th, I don't have any margin to go any earlier than about I mean, I can have I already have a day long thing scheduled. I cannot get out of. That will go till at least 4:30. So 5 o'clock I should be able to make on the 25th, but I can't go any earlier that day at all. I'm stuck.
Okay.
But happy to give you my entire afternoon. Hell, I'll give you from noon until midnight on the 23rd of that. So
There's a limit.
Yeah.
Limit to what you can withstand.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Earlier on the 23rd as well, if that needed to happen.
Same here.
Yep, we can go
Okay.
earlier if we need to.
Okay.
Want to go to 4? We can go at 4.
And that may very well suffice for the need for a third day, being able to start earlier.
Agree.
Okay. So what I have then is on the 23rd, we can get started as early as 4 o'clock. Is that correct?
Which day is this? I'm sorry.
23rd.
Okay. And then on the 25th, that Thursday, they would start at 5 o'clock.
Right.
So
Hey,
just
hey.
caveat to the 23rd, sorry. Just going back real quick to the 23rd. I get off at 4, so if we're going to start at 4, I just need just a logistical issue, right? If I'm in person, it might have to be 4:15. But or I'll take some time
Okay.
off. I just need to know ASAP. That's all.
Yeah, I'll take.
I don't think I have any meetings, so we'll take some time.
Yeah. So the 23rd, I can early as we need to.
Okay.
As early as 2 o'clock.
Same. And I'll take time if needed.
I can start whenever you want. Both days.
So was that Ms. Mansfield that brought up the 4 o'clock conflict? Or at least the
Yes.
tightness of the schedule?
I can take some time. If other people can be done at 2, I can take some time back. I'll take some time off if I need to, if it works for everybody else.
Right. I'm thinking we probably would not need to start that early. But starting as early as 4 would probably help if we need to accommodate more interviews.
Hey, but 4 only gets you what? Only gets you one extra interview though, right? As opposed to 5?
One extra slot, yes.
Right. I mean, so I mean that's fine. I'm just saying, I was thinking that you needed more than one slot. That's why I was thinking, well, do we need to meet earlier than 4? On the 23rd, if all parties can make it again. I don't want to put pressure on anybody to have to do something earlier than they can, because I think Mr. Alexander may have had an issue with going earlier than 4 o'clock as well. So again, I don't want to, I have the issue of the 25th, so I want to be respectful of their issues on the 23rd.
Maybe
Right.
if we just kind of tentatively pencil it in and know that we're going to be early, we'll know more on the 11th again. Because if we only choose 5 candidates to interview, then it's going to be a lot different than if we choose 8 or 9 candidates. So
That's a good point.
maybe
Yeah.
we should just know that we need to probably be a little flexible if we can on Tuesday, the 23rd, but know that we're not starting until at least 5 on the 25th.
Right. Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe a moot point.
Okay.
So any other thoughts on that?
So are we going to go ahead and pencil in a certain time for the 23rd versus waiting? So we all know right now we're going to be at 4, we're going to be at 3, or what are we going to, what time?
Like, what's the earliest?
I have no restrictions.
So what's the earliest we would be able to pencil in for everyone, just to pencil it in, even if we don't meet until 5, what's the earliest we can pencil in that people are comfortable with?
So we're talking strictly now about the 23rd, because the 25th, we can't start earlier than 5, correct? So what's
Right.
everybody's earliest availability on the 23rd?
Right.
I can start whenever you want on the 23rd.
2 o'clock for me.
Bruce and Lisa, could you do a 2 o'clock if you needed to?
Yeah, I was gonna wait and see.
I can
what
probably
everyone's doing.
I can do like 2:30.
So 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I can take 12. Yeah.
2 o'clock
So 2 o'clock
work for Mr.
is the
Alexander.
earliest to
Yes,
pencil in.
we're saying 2 o'clock. I just want to know, because I can probably adjust, but I just need to know so I can pencil it in now.
Okay.
But to be fair, though, I mean, 2 o'clock means you're probably walking out of work at 1:30.
Right.
So are we solid for 2 o'clock on the 23rd?
Or Lisa, would you rather it be 2:30 and walk out of work at 2?
You know what? It doesn't matter. Right now I've got a tentative Zoom from 1:30 to 2:30, but it's not an absolute have to. So if I have to miss that day, it won't be the end. It's a weekly meeting. So
So 2 o'clock.
yeah, 2 o'clock would work. I could take 2 hours, not a biggie.
Ms. McKittrick?
Oh no, 2 o'clock is fine.
You have your hand up.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's from before.
So I think I heard 2 or 2:30 is.
I think 2.
Okay.
2 o'clock.
Everybody-
It sounds like 2 would
2
work.
o'clock. Yeah, 2 o'clock.
And that's a penciled in time if we need it.
Yes. And I think Ruth is on the call now. If she can change the time on our, so everybody can have the invite, that'd be great. I know you had another point.
I think that's it for me in terms of the first round interviews.
And what about second round? You have anything else we need to decide on the second round process?
Well, hopefully. Second round.
And also having the discussion around what that second round day would look like.
Right. I was going to throw out there, and this is an idea for you to consider because it's worked now pretty well in a couple of scenarios, and one of them was rather similar to yours, I think. We had a situation where candidates came in, they met in person with the board members. We had a room set up with a Chromebook for them, and then we rotated in kind of a round robin fashion to allow candidates to come in, meet with the board in person, while another candidate came in and met in a Chromebook with stakeholders. And we actually had 2 different rooms with the Chromebooks. One was a group of teachers and administrators that had the opportunity then to do like a forum interview with the candidates. Those people were virtual. Candidate was sitting in the facility at the Chromebook. And then the other room was a group of community people that were in the same format. They were virtual. The candidate was in another room with a different computer. And so I had set up virtually for the people who attended to be able to provide feedback on a form that I created, an electronic form that they then submitted back to me, and then I was able to compile those responses and give them back to the board following those interviews, so that board had them for the purpose of deliberation. That is a possibility to consider as a format. But like I said, it was something that satisfied being able to get people together in a safe way and be able to allow input from stakeholder groups. Hopefully all that made sense.
I think that's a good idea. I like the idea of it getting input from stakeholders.
So can I ask a question of just a logistical question? I'm not sure if I heard you correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking that each candidate would have one full day, or are you saying more than one candidate on one day?
Well, that format was set up so that there was more than one candidate on a given day. And the last time I did that format, it was set up with 3 finalists who came into the district, and they literally went kind of round robin to the 3 different venues. Now, the one thing that does not allow for, that Dr. Akbar, you and I had talked about, given your district and location, the ability to be able to allow the candidates to tour and see some of the facilities would also be an attractive part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I don't know if maybe I'm the only person who feels this way. So I'll share.
Mm-hmm.
I somewhat, at least the way I was envisioning the interviews, is that we would deal with one candidate at a time, and maybe have some way to be able to debrief with them at the end of the day before they leave, and as well as maybe while the other candidate is going through the interviews, that we had maybe a day and a half type of interview where they got to visit some of the schools on the second day before they left.
Mm-hmm.
We could do our interviews all one day, allowing for breaks throughout the day, and then we have an opportunity stay overnight and then maybe view the schools if they wanted to take that option on the second day before they flew out. So that will be an opportunity if there's any local individuals who may not want to do that, they don't have to do that, but it gives us that option as well without trying to one day. I think it's easier to get clouded.
I was going to say that does provide some flexibility, not knowing at this point where those candidates are going to be coming from.
Yeah.
So we're talking about all the candidates get an opportunity to see the district, or just the finalists?
Just the finalists.
Okay.
Ms. Autry?
Thank you. So I kind of like the idea that Steve mentioned, but my only thing with that, I personally would like to see how the candidates interact with teachers and administrators and our partners, and if we're having some parents or families as well. I want to be able to see that process. So I don't know if what Steve described allows that, like who will be moderating each of those separate groups if we were to consider that particular way.
Yeah, and if not, how do we get that feedback from those stakeholders? But I'm kind of with Ms. Autry. It would be interesting to at least be able to observe that. But then again, if not, then how do you get that feedback?
Can it be recorded?
Well, I don't know if I would want it recorded, but I think one of the things we could just develop a Google form or something like that.
Mhm.
Partners who attend, get it at the end. I don't think we want to record it because we want them to feel comfortable asking questions, and we also want the candidate to feel comfortable being real and unfiltered with, you know.
Yeah, and we did use Google Forms with one of the scenarios, which allowed the people who were involved in the interviews to provide specific feedback on each one of the candidates. Because I think the feedback part is important. That's why we're doing this.
Yep. Any other comments? It looks like Dr. Hall has his hand up. I don't know if that's by accident or.
No, I do. I see Ms. Mansfield has her hand up as well, so I'm happy to let her go first if she'd like to go first.
Thank We both did, but it's okay. I took mine down and put it back up.
Chivalry's not.
You guys
I was
are too
going-
polite.
Ms. Mansfield, I'll defer to you. Go ahead.
Well, I like Patrick's question about what if someone requests a copy of a form, isn't it a public record? And then I think Ms. Autry makes a really good point. So it kind of goes back to, having them see the district and having them see people. It kind of, to me, reminds me of, this is kind of a marriage, right? And you can really tell a lot about a person about how they treat other people, not just their bosses / they might treat their intended really, really well, but how do they treat their mother-in-law to be or whatever? So, I mean, it's always good to see, how do they talk to a parent? How do they talk to a principal? This is a really important community job. So I agree with Ms. Autry. I think being able to see some of that interaction, even if it's just a little bit of it, might be helpful to a decision. Maybe it rules someone in that we haven't given as much of a credit to, or maybe it rules someone out because, maybe they are just so fantastic at interacting with the public that we love that, or vice versa. Just a thought.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that as well. So confession here. So I was having some internet issues, so I didn't catch the first part of what the original sort of idea was as far as the round robin. I only caught bits and pieces of it. But a couple comments. One, I'm wary of recording anything because I would hate to see somebody give an answer that maybe wasn't their best answer, that all of a sudden it ends up on YouTube or the internet and is there for life, right? So too often, we've seen that happen a lot in society. So I just wouldn't want to contribute to that. And then number two, I like the idea, I like sort of where Dr. Atbar's head was at, talking about bringing them in a candidate at a time. Because, ostensibly we're not doing finalist interviews with like 6-7 people. So it's only a handful that we're doing it with, 2, 3, 4.
It's usually 3 would be the
3. Okay.
The typical number.
Okay. Roger that. Yeah. So if it's 3 people, I'd love to take a more thoughtful, deliberative approach. Make sure, because to Ms. Mansfield's point, this is more like a marriage, right? I mean, we're not looking to change the superintendent out in 2 or 3 in a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, right? So I'd like to be as thoughtful and deliberate about this as possible, and maybe err on the side of taking maybe a little more, maybe too much time as opposed to not enough. To give them a chance to, I think as some of you have said on the call already, would love to see you in front of other people, see what your interpersonal skills are like. And granted, some of that can be, can be a show too. But again, I think the more repetitions that we can get over their time period here, the better. And then also too, there's usually a part of this, when you're hiring, recruiting, hiring an executive, there's usually a component. And I know that we're in a pandemic, but there's usually some sort of component where, maybe you share a meal, you go to lunch, you go to dinner or something like that. Right. Or there's a social place where maybe there's hors d'oeuvres or something, but just something where like you can see these people in sort of different venues. And so, and just see how they act around different people. So to me, I would favor a more deliberative approach that maybe is 2 days in duration, and we kind of plan the itinerary out from there. But I do applaud the efficiency of having them all come in the same time and kind of round robin them. But I feel like we run the risk of depriving them of, really, the kind of thoughtfulness and sort of thoughtful examination that I think as individuals they deserve. I mean, to me, the round robining, I'd be in favor of doing that for like first round interviews. But I don't know that I'd want to do that for round two. So anyway, so apologies if I was redundant. Again, I did miss the first part of this, because that was an internet issue. So those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hall. I think that we've heard some pretty good feedback so far. I'll share just my thoughts on two things. One, when we started this process, we said we would be as transparent as possible with all stakeholders, community, parents, families, as well as staff and administrators. We want all parties to have an opportunity to weigh in on this decision. And so, them filling out a form to inform our decision making, I don't think is a concern that I have, even if it becomes a public record, because all of this is public record, to be honest with you.
Well,
and so
anything that you do, I was going to say that anything you do with stakeholders in a forum or interview setting with candidates is going to be a public meeting.
Right.
That's the only thing that's executive session is what they would do directly with the board.
Right. And that was so that was the other thing that I was going to share for mentioning that is, we're going to, so one of the things that we could do, I think, is maybe assign one board member to go to each one of the meetings with the candidate if they so wanted to sit in and say nothing but just listen in. I think that will be appropriate, but I think it might be a little intimidating and maybe even probably not the best route to go if we all attended every open session that they had with the different stakeholders. That we have a lot of professionals who opinions and feedback we are going to rely on in making this decision, and that I'm comfortable with not attending any of those meetings and allowing them to give us their feedback, and me just weighing their feedback in time that I spent with them in addition to that. So those are my thoughts. Anybody else have anything else?
Yeah, Dr. Akbar, I like that thought too, because I don't want to be around anyone to make it feel intimidating either. But I trust our corporate partners and people in the community to give us their feedback, because it's going to be our superintendent for our school district, but it's going to be their superintendent as well. So I trust their feedback. I'm sure they would give us what we need to make a good decision on selecting a good superintendent.
Right. And again, all of this is additional data points. We get to make the decision based off in which we see fit. I feel like those additional data points will be informative, help us make the decision when we get it down to one or two candidates, and it's hard to make it additional feedback may be the let's make that final decision. So,
Well, so I guess I have a clarifying question with regard to that, right? I mean,
okay.
are there? I guess my question is would we put together an advisory document to be utilized by, I guess more of a maybe a guiding principles document, because I wouldn't want to have somebody in the community, a stakeholder or somebody else in the community ask a series of questions that would be inappropriate,
Right.
So to ask a candidate, right? So that's where so the balance for me is having a board member present. You certainly, the argument goes is having a board member present could have a chilling effect, right? But it also has a sentinel effect as well, right? In that it ensures that there's not inappropriate questions perhaps being asked, right? So and this is not about, this isn't about a lack of trust. It's just that, people have varying degrees of experience doing these kinds of interviews, right? And these kinds of interactions, right? And I don't think that we can assume that everybody is similarly situated and has a similar high level of expertise, So if we're not going to have if we're not going to have a board member present, then I think that in lieu of that, then I think that we should move to have a guiding guiding principles document that every stakeholder would get, that would kind of list out some guiding principles of kind of do's and don'ts, right? So again, because I just want to ensure that there's not just transparency in the process, but that there's but that there's integrity as well.
Now, I will throw out there, Dr. Hall, that I agree with you 100% on everything you said. And the way I have always run the forum type interviews is ask the people who are present to submit questions to me, and then I moderate and I present the questions to the candidates. And then the people are there to be able to respond. So that allows people to ask the things that they think they need to ask. It also allows facilitation in terms of, we're invariably going to get duplicate or nearly duplicate questions. And yes, there's always questions in there that just really aren't appropriate to be asked, or maybe need to be reworded in a way that they are appropriate for the candidate to answer. So I've always handled them in that way, virtually or in person.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine by me, Steve. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you'd be present.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to clarify. And then the other part of it is, if there were multiple groups and meeting with different candidates at the same time, I would moderate one space and we would have a designated district person moderate another space, depending on who the group is. I typically, in those situations, have moderated the community groups.
Very much. I personally would prefer, if there was moderation style, that it was a person who was not associated with the district or the board. What I think is important is that the candidate one of them is going to be hired, and it's going to be our superintendent, and we'll be shepherding these relationships on behalf of the district, to allow them the opportunity to begin to build that relationship. In this public forum is really their first opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. And I really would prefer that there was no board member there to have that process, and that we figure out a way to get their feedback outside of that. Even if that means if Steve is moderating and we didn't want to give them a feedback form, which I'm strongly for. But if we decided to get that, maybe Steve could share some themes and some notes from each one with the board. So I think we have options. I just wanted to put that out there. Mrs. McKittrick.
Thank you. I like the idea of having Steve moderate and have a look at the questions first, and then make sure they're appropriate. And if they need to be reworded, I think that's a great idea. And then we stay in the other interview, and Steve can manage that Chromebook interview, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that too that I have always set up is it only seems fair, at least, you know, and especially it's kind of like your first round interview situation where people need to hear the candidates answer the same question. So I asked the group to submit the questions. We, present the questions to the first candidate, and I present the same questions to the next candidate, and so on. So again, it's very much like your first round format, where people are hearing the candidates respond to the same questions, and they can kind of measure one against the other in terms of the responses and who they like or what they like.
We're asking the public to give us strengths and weaknesses, not necessarily asking them to tell us who we should hire. So
Correct.
I think that's also just nice feedback and information for us to have. That I wanted to put out there. I think that once we determine what those different forums are, maybe we've already done that. I think to Dr. Hall's point, I would be very open to this is, as the president having either or breakfast or dinner with each of the candidates to debrief or talk about the beginning of their day, and have that kind of a smaller group time with them. Personally, I think it might be better to have it at the end of their day, but I think that we can factor that in, and maybe they get a chance to have time with board leadership. That might be a good aspect for our candidates.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do we have down which all groups we're going to available for that second round?
In terms of who's represented in the stakeholder groups? No, we haven't actually confirmed any of that.
Okay.
I think
Can we at least maybe start with the focus groups and how we broke them down to the focus groups, and then see like that or differently?
And determine how many we can do, because the focus groups were broken down as community members, although the Zoom groups that I did were specifically with community leaders, partners of the district. And personally, I think that should be one of your interview groups. Then we had parents in another one. I met specifically with building administrators. And then we did the surveys with teachers.
Yeah. But we also had to meet with the student board members as a focus groups and clerical staff as well.
Yeah.
Support staff. So do you think it might be beneficial? I know we probably can't do as many groups as we did for the focus groups.
Right.
But we had one open session for those individuals who administration, one open group for those who work within the schools, one open community group for other individuals in the community who wants to, and then you can have that fourth one with community partners that you referenced. Those lines. So we have, maybe that's too many, but maybe we just have one for everyone who works for APS, and it's more of a presentation and then questions, and then others are community open for community, and then one for specific community partners. But I think we have to at least have those three. That would be my suggestion Any other thoughts?
No, I like that, if I may, and I don't want to jump in front of Dr. Hall. He has his hand up. Is that really up, or
Sorry. That
is it okay if I go?
please.
Okay. I like where you're going with that. But I wanted to go back just one step to the meeting with board leadership, and I'm not opposed to that in any way. Is that before or after we make a final selection?
That would be that would be before. That was when they were actually come for the interview.
Yeah. All of this is designed to feed into the final selection.
Okay. I'm not sure. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not sure if I see the benefit in it or if I necessarily agree with it. I don't know that I, even were I still in leadership, I don't know that I would ask to meet with candidates outside of the full board. I would feel like that would take something away from the full board, since the final candidate or the successful candidate reports to the full board and not just board leadership. And given where we are as a board and our different tenures on the board, I don't know that, to me, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's just my opinion. I don't know if it adds, and I don't know what weight to give whatever your interactions are with that candidate. I don't know how I factor that into my final decision, or my final opinion of any of the candidates. And that's not to take anything away from what you're suggesting. I just don't know if I get it yet. So maybe some more around that, or if you'd like to have a conversation offline, I'm okay with that too.
I actually don't think that that's an abnormal thing to happen, but tell us if it is.
I've had a couple of districts do that, but for the most part, typically no.
Okay, so you wouldn't suggest? Well, the whole board can't have lunch or dinner with them, so don't do that.
It just has to be with, yeah. I mean, needs to be with comfort level of the entire board. For that conversation, I don't know if that's really for the benefit of the candidate.
I mean, if I could weigh in for just a quick second. I mean, maybe this is something where education's just different from other industries, but this is fairly common practice in other industries, whether it's retail, whether it's healthcare, whether it's business. I mean, law firms. I mean, like it's just fairly common practice. So
yeah, it is.
Maybe education's just a different animal. But that point is so. But I think again, the whole board can't go have dinner or have lunch with a candidate. So so to me, it's just about sort of again getting additional feedback on a candidate in a different venue. Now, if the issue here is if the lack of comfort is due to, I mean, again, so I mean, I don't want to speak on what lack of comfort would be due to, but I think that there's a certain level of trust that I think we are going to have to exhibit and have as a board as we move forward here, right? I mean, so if it's a trust issue, I think that's something that we're going to need to hash out, but I hope it's not. I mean, but again, I mean, this is just common practice to me. So again, Steve, others that are on call, I mean, maybe education's just that different of an animal. But again, I'm gonna press for it and say that I think it's something that we should do. And so and I'm happy to listen to other thoughts. But again, I mean, you mentioned that there's some districts that do it, Steve. So this isn't something that is completely beyond the pale. With regard to, it's not out of the realm of normalcy, I guess is my comment here. So
yeah.
So again,
no, it is not.
Definitely do it. So that's just my thoughts.
And it would.
Yeah, I'm just saying it.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say most districts do not do it, but no, you're right. In many settings, it's a very normal practice to do that. And the other thought is, I'll just throw it out there: what if Dr. James was the person to host the candidate?
I think we would need to have that conversation with Dr. James.
Sure.
I know he has wanted to have let the board have some autonomy in the process. So I'm not sure how comfortable he will be, but we can definitely ask him. That's definitely something we can ask him. Going back to the point, we do it in higher ed all the time, so I don't see the issue. If we did that, one of my thoughts and why when Dr. Hall mentioned it was that it gives us an opportunity as a board. We all can't do it, so it gives the board leadership an opportunity to have a conversation with them and answer any questions that they still may have. How was their day? There could be something that happened or some nuance with in the way in which we operate that they may have questions about. And I think that all of those things are legitimate questions and kind of wind down questions that would be beneficial to candidates, but then also to the leadership and to the board. And we can relay that information back to the board, just like we do with everything else. We've been overly communicative, so I'm not sure what it is. Ms. Manfield.
So there are some things here. So being hired into leadership myself in the past, I did do a dinner, but it was with an executive committee. It was more than just the board president and vice president. Maybe if we rotated it, I don't know. There's some things that are different about being a public board than being an executive committee for a nonprofit, or even in higher ed where people truly outrank each other. We are all 7 equal members of a board with 7 equal votes. The leadership positions that you guys have are given by the board, and it's an important position. It is to disseminate information to us. There's lots of really important parts of that, but we are still 7 equal. So what if we did something like, this is just a compromise I'm trying to think of. Maybe it would be, there's 7 of us. If we have 3 candidates, somehow it's 2. I can't do the math, but different people meet with different ones and report back. That's the thing that we've talked about a lot on this board, is that we each bring diverse, unique depth and perceptions to this board. It's one of the things that I think is our strength, right? And some of that's in experience, and some of that's in our personal jobs, and some of that's in other, we could go on and on, right? So I'm just trying to think if maybe that would be a compromise way. I don't know. Just trying to think of what compromise there might be so that there's a comfort level. I don't know. I'm just throwing.
Sorry.
I mean, we're talking about a lunch here. Maybe a dinner. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just confused. I mean, we're talking about who gets to have lunch with a can. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to just acknowledge Mrs. McKittrick does have to leave for an event. She just left. So thank you, Mrs. McKittrick, for participating, and I'll follow up with you afterwards, as well as Ruth and Steve will send minutes. So Ms. Autry.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak for myself personally. I don't have a problem with the dinner. I think it's absolutely fine. We can set our own standard there by having that. I don't have an issue with our leadership attending that and reporting back to us like they generally do, And then I just want to say for the record, as far as the focus groups, because that's what we were talking about.
Can we just pause for 1 second? I'm sorry, Miss Autry. Looks like we lost Patrick. Get him back before you continue. As Patrick wasn't supposed to leave, that was not normal. So he's back. I'm sorry, Miss Autry, you were talking about focus groups.
Sorry.
So to me, it's important. I want to hear our student board members' voice. I want to make sure it doesn't get lost in those adult groups, because sometimes we always know what's best, and our young people surprise us with things that we haven't even considered. So I think it's very important to have their distinct voice as part of that process, and not, get maybe lost in one of those groups where, the adults are going to certainly have concerns that might differ. So.
Thank you for sharing that.
One tiny quick thought, not that you two are incredibly sensitive to this, but sometimes, you're both men. So would it be good to have, I'm just throwing out there that if we had those things in there, it might, I don't know. I'm just looking for different ways to bring different perspectives if we're going to do that. And I'm not unconvinced that it can't be the way it is. I'm just looking at other ideas.
I'm going to just throw this in there. Maybe it's just, and I trust that we get the information back from whomever would be there, that they would bring the information back to us. But just so that everybody feels comfortable, what about 2 people going, to dinner with the candidate, and both can go and they can listen and see what's going on and come back? I'm not saying I have to go, but I'm saying maybe others who want to go, that might be okay. I mean, I look at the corporate world, I look at the education world. There are 2 different worlds to a certain extent. Higher education is a little different as well, but there's still a balance, always still a balance that we can have in dealing with all of it. So that's just my suggestion. Maybe 2 people are going with one of the leaders of the board.
As a 7-member board, you can legally have 3 people there without having a quorum.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can read more about this, but at day's end, to Ms. Mansfield's point, there's 7 people on the board, just because a person doesn't go along with the lunch it doesn't minimize their vote. They still have a vote, right? It's not saying that, oh, you didn't go to the lunch, now your vote only gets counted as half. So we're all still equals as far as the votes that we cast here. And I think at day's end, you elect board leadership for a reason, right? So those are folks that you trust and in trust, to sit down and do just these types of things, and so for me, again, I'm just asking and imploring my colleagues on this call to trust in, myself and Dr. Akbar to be able to have lunch or dinner with a candidate and bring back the information, to the rest of you. If there's something that untoward that were to happen, that you could trust that we share it with you, or something that was great, that we bring it back to you. But I think that what I would resist is this idea that we need to chaperone, board leadership to have a lunch or a dinner with our finalist candidates. And this is exactly why you have leadership positions, is so they can do these types of things that are largely ceremonial, to be frank, right? So this is just me asking you all to, to trust, to trust that we can do this, without dropping the ball over lunch or dinner. I don't think there's
a mistrust. I don't like that being said to mistrust. I don't think there's any mistrust. I think there's just, we're talking about something that's going on. It was a decision we might want to make. Maybe we're putting too much into this here, but we need to maybe get back on track. But still, I think everybody trusts each other on this here. If we don't, then we got a problem or issue at our board. So I think there's one thing we need to understand it. You know, we do trust. If we don't trust an issue.
I agree
So
with you, Mr. Allen. Yeah, I completely agree with you.
So thank you very much. So we're talking about the process and whether or not we want to add that into the process. So Ms. Mansfield had something, and then Mr. Bravo.
I was just going to say, they're in the comments, and I just want to make sure that it's said out loud. Again, it's not about trust. It's not about anything like that. And I don't like the characterization that somehow that's what it's about. So I just want to make sure that I say that out loud. It is in the chat, but everybody can't see the chat. So it's just about different perspectives and bringing different views. And, Patrick voiced in a question, and we're just trying to explore it. That's all. I just don't want us to be mischaracterized somehow.
Thank you. And that's what I wanted to pick up on too, because I don't appreciate the characterization either that it's about mistrust, because it's not. What it was about for me and why I asked the question is I don't know that I see a value when two people go to lunch or dinner with someone and 5 people don't. I mean, is there a potential that you're going to see something, hear something, pick up on something that the rest of us don't in an interview process? Sure. But that's still subject to your own interpretation and your own perception, and 5 other people don't get to see that. I'm suggesting, or my suggestion was, I don't know that I see the value in it. I really don't. But like I said, it's not that I'm strictly opposed to it either, but I also don't like bringing up a concern. And therein lies, I think, part of the issue, that if we can just talk about it, the minute that I bring it up, the perception is automatically negative. The perception is automatically like I just made a stupid suggestion that, you disagree with, but instead of a cordial disagreement, it seems like I'm being put back on the defensive now because of something that I bring up that I just say, I don't know that I see the value in it. But therein lies the problem, because then when you go to lunch or dinner or breakfast with that candidate, how much weight do I give whatever you bring back? If even in bringing up the suggestion, the treatment is a little more about, it's extremely defensive. It's automatically about mistrust, or it's automatically about something else. And that characterization is not healthy. So again, it's not that I completely disagree with it. I don't know that I see the value in it, but if the group decides that our leadership should go, then I'll absolutely support it. The other thing I would say is, having both been on the hired side as well as serving on boards and being on executive committees and being on the hiring side, I would say that you're absolutely correct that that's taken place on those boards that I've served on. It's typically after we've narrowed it down to a final candidate. That is something that I even do when I hire staff. It's after I've made a final selection and I believe that I want to hire this person, and now I want to be in a more social, relaxed setting. But that's just my experience. But again, each of us brings a different perspective, different experience. So just my thoughts.
Okay. Ms. Autry.
Thank you. So then I just want to remind everybody that we all are going to have the opportunity to interview this candidate. So I think this dinner, not only is it a nice gesture for someone who has taken the time to go through our process, it also, we can submit any further things to our leadership, that they could possibly discuss. And then I'm not even, if there's no legal issue, I don't object to a third person being there. But I don't think it's, required. But if it makes, if there's not a legal issue, I don't object. But I do trust our leadership to, move forward. And a dinner, I think it's a nice gesture. This doesn't seem like it's an easy process. So why not provide that for someone who took the time to come and interview with us?
Yeah. And I'll make this final statement, and then we'll move forward. I think it is important that we do something to help the candidate debrief and to work through even some of the nuances that is Akron-esque in of itself. And so I think that it is important, and we can decide if we want to have multiple members do it. But I think that we'll work with Steve to try to figure out what makes the most sense based off each person's candidate. And at minimum, it is my desire to at least be able to do that on behalf of this board. And if we want to add other people beyond myself and do that, I don't think that that's sure. But to Mr. Bravo's point, we probably want, I don't think it's a serial meeting if there's 3 different distinct candidates. And if we wanted to pick different people to attend different ones, we probably wouldn't get in a challenge. But I'll have a conversation with Ms. Fidel about that as well and get back to the board. Steve, I think that's all you had based off what I can tell. Is there anything else?
No, I think we will need to work out what groups and who we bring together. Are we wanting to bring in finalist candidates on 3 separate days, assuming there are 3?
I believe that's what the board consensus was.
Okay, because the other thing I want to throw out there that may be a wrinkle, for the focus group forums to be effective, we need to have people that are going to commit to each one of those times to be there, so that you're getting the input from the people after they've heard each candidate answer the question.
Right.
So we need to make sure that.
I thought you were done.
Oh, well, I was going to say we need to make sure that people who are going to do this are committed to doing it through the whole process.
So let me share that I'm not sure if it matters if it's the same people every time. I don't think that matters. But Ruth will work with each one of the different pools. So we do one pool, one open forum to all APS employees. Ruth will work with us to get that information out to them, and they will show up. I don't think we'll have a challenge there. If we have an open session for our student board members, Ruth will work with them to get them, there. And I don't think that it'll be a challenge, as we saw all 8 of them attended the focus group, as well as if we did an open community forum where we open it up to non-APS employees and open it up to them. Challenge getting parents and community members there. We've had so much engagement over the last year and a half or so. I don't think that'll be a challenge. And if we want to do the focus group with community partners and we send it out to all of them, Ruth will help us with that as well. She's helping us coordinate. She did a wonderful job.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we'll have a challenge with getting people there.
Okay.
For this search.
Okay. Are these different groups going to be virtual? Okay.
I think the board, if I'm not misreading what happened, is the board did like your idea of the candidate having a Chromebook or whatever computer and having those sessions piped in while they're in a room. He kind of talked about being against is while that's happening, the board is interviewing another candidate.
Right. Okay.
Not sure if we want to do that.
So it sounds like we're going to pretty effectively put your
Nice.
finalist candidates through their paces there.
I think we'll try to build in breaks so that person can have breaks in between, and we're not running them in the Zoom back-to-back thing that we this maze we all seem to be living in today.
Right.
Try to break that up for them as well.
And the thought is perhaps that could be broken up with a tour of facilities, lunch in between.
Yep. Yeah, we definitely have to coordinate that.
Okay. So the only, the part that we haven't actually solidified is actual dates for these to happen, because this is going to be an all-day event for each one of these candidates, which is fine.
So I know we talked about the week of the 5th, 7th being dates that work still. We can always have them do community meetings earlier in the day, and then if we needed to have our meetings in the evening or afternoon. We can organize it based on what people's availabilities are each day. We don't have to have them go in the same exact order each day if more difficult than the other. I know when we set those days, I already took the whole days off. So
Okay.
For me, I'm able to make whatever works those 3 days. But I don't know what about the rest of the board for the 5th, 6th, and 7th. We won't need all day though. I do want to put that out there. It doesn't sound like, based on what we've decided today, that we're going to need to be available all day. But we're going to be flexible about what time we want to do our interview. I'm sorry, Mr. Bravo.
I was just going to ask, based on those dates too, is there anyone that we're going to need that's not going to be available since it's APS spring break, or is there? I mean, are we just saying like I mean, that is an odd week, but I don't know that there's a lot of wiggle room.
That is a wrinkle that it's spring break.
Yeah.
That's
and it's
an issue.
Right after Easter, and I don't know if people are out of town or.
Yeah, that could very well be an issue.
Now, the good thing is it's virtual, and spring break is not necessarily for all staff, I don't think. I think it's really just for teachers and people in the buildings, and maybe they might not even be off. I don't know. Ruth, do you know the answer to that? Is everyone off from spring break?
Spring break, yes.
And it
Would
also
definitely
depends
be
on
the principals, teachers, and students.
Yeah. And that would
Okay.
also be, the problem with that is, in terms of community, is spring break is oftentimes a week when families, students get away, go somewhere, or have other plans.
So do we want to move it to the week after that? Unfortunately.
Does
Or is
April
that the week
12th
of the
work?
12th?
April 12th is wide open
That's-
for me.
It's not for me, but that's also that's early college, high school spring break. It's also Akron spring break. I don't know if that matters to anyone, but there's we may run into that regardless. I'm not sure when most folks' spring breaks are.
Yeah, I think it'll be better to do it during Akron spring break than it is to do it during APS spring break.
Yeah, trying to do it during the APS spring break is not, that would not be fair to staff and families, actually.
And this is
So
the focus group piece mainly.
this is for our interviews, our finalist interviews.
Just finalist interviews, which those are going to be in person though then.
Yes. And
So what
then
was the virtual piece you said? The good news is it'll be virtual.
the community meetings and the open sessions with all APS staff be virtual.
Okay. Got it.
So
And the student board members, I believe they get together that Wednesday, the 14th. Anyway, so I don't know what's on their agenda, but maybe that can be cleared since they're already scheduled that day. On the 14th, the student board members at 11.
but that's only for one candidate. We would need to figure out a time for them for all 3 of those days.
Yeah.
Mr. Alexander, were you?
No, go ahead. No.
I'll just, yeah. And this probably, I guess the sooner we decide this, the better too, because we were planning on being out of town at least the last half of that week. And I may be able to push that by at least a day, but we're cutting it tight because we'll have to cut our spring break in half.
You're talking about the week of the 12th?
Yeah, and I'm talking about me personally, our family, and my 15-year-old. So we were supposed to be out of town that week, but again, we were already pushing it to the last half of that week, and I can probably push it one more day. But just the sooner we know, the better.
So we're probably talking about 3 people to interview during that week.
Yeah, likely. Yeah.
Yeah, typically 2 or 3.
2 or 3. And what else would we have to do that week with those individuals?
Go through the
doing interview.
Yeah, going through the interview process with the virtual groups and with you as a board. And then the only thing left after that would be deliberation.
Yeah. And I think if we can do it this way, that would be great. That we have the interview and then do deliberations for each candidate after each candidate's interview. That might be really good to at least start having those conversations after each candidate and meeting after all 3 have attended. That would be on that final day where we talk about all other candidates at once, or maybe we have another meeting another day. But again, we're not going to need to attend every one of their public forums, so we can be meeting to have those deliberations while they're having a public forum.
Say maybe let's do it interview all the candidates on one day, and everything we need to do with them, get it done and be done with it. Unless we're looking at something different. In my mind, I'm looking at we're having 3 candidates going to be interviewing. We interview one, we interview the other, we want to do the third one, and if we want to deliberate after each one of those or deliberate after all 3, then we can do that, and we can maybe come up with a decision. Now, as far as the other things that we're talking about, around that, then we have to figure that out. But at least we can get everything done with the candidates all in one day. It's up to us.
Patrick, when are you right now? I mean, So it's, I guess I don't want you to say in public what day you're going out of town. So I just want to make sure we're considered, because if it was somebody else that had plans to be out, we would consider it. So, I mean, we need all 7 of us to be able to make that final decision. And I hate to have it, what if we don't make it by Tuesday and Patrick's set to go out of town? And I'm worried about that too. And so I think we need to look at that. I mean, I can't believe that it didn't jump out at us that we had spring break in there. But it didn't to me either.
It didn't to me either.
2020. In 2021, time means nothing. So I'm still confused by spring.
To answer your question, Lisa, I will do my best to just work around whatever the group decides. If we could try and keep it earlier in the week, in that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, maybe Thursday, then I think if nothing else, I can push it, because we've got 2 things going on that week. So anyway, I'll just leave it there. So we have 2 things going on that week. So the earlier, the better. And then the other stuff, to Dr. Akbar's point, if it's virtual and I can join that virtually and watch, then I can do that from anywhere, or, so, I mean, that doesn't matter. But the interview process, and so I was, if I may, on Mr. Alexander's comment too, I think we've done both too, where we've interviewed, left time to debrief in between each one, and then of course had the big debrief at the end. I also think they tend to work a little better when they're closer together, so you don't forget too much. That comparison is a little easier, but that's just me.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Now, mind you, one of the things about interviewing them all on one day, which I think we've already said we didn't want to do, is while they're here, I'm assuming myself and Ruth and others will have to host the person while they're here. And then the other piece of that would be the feedback from these sessions in order to inform our decision making. So we don't want to do the deliberations too early. That doesn't happen. So the other option could be that if we can't do, well, never mind, that doesn't make sense. Never mind.
So I'm kind of.
We have to.
Are we saying we're going to do an interview for each candidate, one each day? So if we're saying
Yes.
one each day with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's 3 days, that's 3 people. We could debrief if we want to, if we want to take another, I mean, I don't want to take too much time in between, but to get the feedback from everyone else, get their feedback, and then make a decision as to who we're going to choose as our superintendent.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we can take too much time in between, our interviewing and getting input and, figuring out who we want to be our superintendent. We can just go ahead and get those things done.
Okay, what are your thoughts? Now, no, we do have a meeting on Monday the 19th as well. We can have the final, some final conversations at that meeting, just to put that out there. We don't have to solve the world all in one day. Other thoughts?
Actually, I think our meetings are the 12th and the 26th that month, unless I'm looking at something wrong. But to your point, we could do the 19th. Yeah.
It could just be on my calendar.
Well, let's interview Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we can talk about it on the 19th after we get all the information back.
I mean, I suppose on some level that gives everyone a chance to digest and think about the interviews and the feedback and.
Right. So
Yeah, you
we
do
have
need some time to process all the feedback you're going to get.
yes. Which I think if you just made a Google form, I think that'll be the easiest.
Yes.
So we have a meeting on the 12th, which means if we did an interview that day, and we would still have to do our meeting.
Yeah, I would say scratch that. That was my fault. I didn't realize it was on the 12th. Yeah, scratch the 12th for me. I don't want us to be too taxed on that day of the board meeting, unless everyone wants to do that.
So what are your thoughts? I mean, we're going to have to one of these days we're going to have a long meeting. So either we have it with the actual for the board, the regularly scheduled board meeting, or we're going to have a probably longer meeting that following week that we schedule. So that's the other thing. Now, if we're talking about having candidates on the 12th, I don't think it's going to be. We're going to not be able to avoid also having the regular scheduled board meeting on that day.
Right. Yeah.
So
And our meeting with the candidate, assuming it's going to be an hour and a half, I don't think it's going to be 5 hours.
So maybe we're looking at the 13th, 14th, and 15th. And I'll work on maybe pushing spring break back a day. But that would be the 13th, 14th, 15th, and then Dr. Akbar, maybe going back to your point of a special meeting on the 19th to follow the feedback and take the weekend to think about it, basically, and then try and make a decision on Monday night or Monday afternoon. Or
I mean, I wouldn't say it would be the decision because there's still more to the process to be some of the major decision points that we'll need to make. Yeah. I just want to make sure that no one watching thinks that we're going to be able to have a decision to them on the 19th. I don't think we'll probably still have three to 4 weeks afterwards working out some of the details. So
yeah, just as quick disclosure, the 14th of April, I mean, we can talk about it more offline, but I've got a hard conflict that day that I really can't get out of. I mean, we're talking about April 14th, right?
all day.
It's most of the day. So again, so happy to talk offline, but it's most of the day on the 14th.
Okay. I think we can decide, again, like I said before, we don't need to have the interview candidates all at the same time each day. So we can decide based off availability, which Ruth has been pretty helpful with us trying to get things taken care of, where we can, if we pick those days, we can decide when everyone's available and say that that's the block of time that the board's meeting with them. Then Steve can work around that to fit all the other pieces into it.
Can I go back real quick just to make sure I'm not misunderstanding this part? So if the committee or the meetings with the public and the teachers and things like that, could those be the 12th, 13th, 14th? Could the board have spoken to them the week before like we thought? Or do they have to be on the same day? If they're going to be virtual with those folks, can they meet with us in person the week before and then meet with the other folks the next week? Just trying to figure out a way that maybe it does take that spring break into consideration for administrators and teachers and families, but allows us to not mess with Derek's thing and Patrick's thing the following week. If we're not set to make a decision by the 19th, if we're going to have more of a process after those interviews come in, Just trying to clarify if that would be possible.
Yeah, I think it could be possible. The only thing is, which probably is a logistic means that we can work out and visit some of the schools. We'll probably have to ask someone like Deb Folk or someone to candidate to some of the schools, and then they can open up the school, pick certain schools to go to see. I don't know. I think it's probably, to me, it would be better to have them come while there's actually people in the schools, the feel of the schools, but with the final, whoever the candidate is, we're interested in making the offer to. We would have to pay for them to potentially fly back in if they're not here or local.
The question is, couldn't that be worked into part of the day on the 12th, 13th, and 14th?
Yes, it could, definitely. Being with us, that means they're here 2 weeks in a row.
That's true.
So that's what I was saying, that to Mrs. Mansfield's point. It sounds great, but those logistics, at some point, we may be bringing or paying for someone to travel here twice if they're not already here. My thought is to try to do the travel, at one time. It makes more sense to do it all in one day. And to Mr. Bravo's point of possibly, the week of the 12th changing it. The other thought that I'm having while I'm listening to everyone, I know we said we wanted to do everybody on separate days, but maybe one of those days we do have both of the interviews for the board, and then the next day that one of those candidates just has interviews.
In other words, two candidates. Are you suggesting do two candidates on one day and one on the third day? Or second day?
And that would help us from not having to go so far into the week to respect Mr. Bravo's plans. So obviously, Dr. Hall's as well, because you have that one day where he's unavailable most of the day. Maybe the 13th we have two candidates. The 14th.
Or I thought it was the 12th and the 13th, because isn't the 14th Dr. Hall's conflict day?
It is, but he didn't say it was all day. He said it was just most of the day. So that's what I was just saying. Because on the 12th, we have a board meeting.
Oh, okay.
But that's the other thing. Maybe for both of those days, it would feel like we're having two meetings because we are for both days. So maybe we decide to do that. I don't know. There's a potential option. And my thought at this point, if you think that will work, and then maybe have Ruth and options to the board.
Then we'll figure out the schedule. I think, no, in fact, that was swimming in my mind, the idea of doing, if you have three candidates, one on the 12th, two on the 13th, that would certainly work. And we would, schedule the virtual meetings around the meetings that they have with you.
Okay.
I
think that, to me, that sounds good. Anyone opposed to that? Like, no one's opposed.
I'm just not about interviewing on the same day as a board meeting. That's my.
Well, that's why I said two on the 13th and one on the 14th.
Yeah.
the one on the 14th.
Oh, okay.
But Dr. Hall, are you available later in the day on the 14th, or is it earlier?
Possibly later.
Okay.
I'm looking here at the schedule. Yeah, maybe could get out as early as 2 o'clock. But yeah, I'm started at 8 o'clock that day. I'm sorry, 8:30 that day I start.
And so if we did our interview with the candidate at 4,
I can almost 100% yes. I just got to confirm one thing, but yeah, almost assuredly yes.
we did 2 on the 13th, and then the one at 4 or 5 o'clock on the 14th. That seems like that might work for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way we don't have to go to a third day. The candidates will be on maybe the following day as well. And that later time might actually work well because they can actually, one of the things we could organize is them visiting the schools before interview with us in that late afternoon. Community the next day. So I think that could possibly work. So let Ruth and Steve work up some options for us for those 2 days and see how they can make it work from there.
So we're talking about March 13 and March 14, correct?
April 13th and 14th.
I'm sorry, April. And when I said March.
And the other thing is, we all have to be flexible because we don't know what we have going on. We may have to come back to the drawing board with dates anyway. So I just want to put that out there to the public and to the board. These are our ideal dates and situations. When we're dealing with real people, we make adjustments from there. So we might hear from Ruth and polling us for other days that we might be available. All right. Any final questions for Steve? Do you have any final things for us?
Now I'm going to compose the thoughts here, and I'll feed this back to all of you, and then we'll move forward to get that worked out. I think we are definitely set for March 23rd and 25th for the first round interviews, correct?
Yes.
Good. That sounds good. And we are set for March 11 to do the candidate screening.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a critical date. So, and then the date we need to look forward, dates beyond that, we need to look forward to our April 13th and April 14th. And we'll work out the schedule for meeting with stakeholders, as well as being able to have that second interview with the board.
Yes.
Okay.
And then also visit to the schools to do it. I think we give them that option and they can decide. We can organize who takes them around and all of that.
Yeah, it's a nice touch for out-of-town candidates.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Anything from other board members?
No, I have nothing, Steve. Thank you.
All righty.
Yeah. I don't see anything, Steve. Thank you very much. We appreciate all the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And so we got a lot of work to do here in the next month, but we'll work through it.
Yes, yes. All right, so we have one other agenda item, which I believe will be short based off the discussion we just had. So you can feel free to leave, Steve, if you want. And thank you again for joining us and for doing everything you're doing for our superintendent search.
All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Steve.
Okay, thanks. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so the next agenda item is returning to meeting in person as an option. Wanted to open the floor for discussion. Just before we do that, I want to give just an overview of what I thought I heard already, is that we want to give the board the potential of a hybrid option, at least initially, and then move to in-person options. But if we, even in person, we would be on camera like we are today, so that it's not just a faraway camera showing all of us. So if I've kept what we've said, that's great. Any further discussion on that item? So are we asking Ruth to potentially work with Ryan to put together a resolution purpose for our next board meeting? Okay, I'm seeing head nods. So any objections to that? Okay, there's no objections. And we have to do that via resolution and official vote at our next board meeting, because we did in March of 2020 and vote to move to virtual meetings. And so this will be a change to that. It will also be one of the things that the state has said we are allowed to meet virtually, I think, until the end of this year. So we will be taking a little bit of a different action from that, starting, I guess, after the meeting that we have next week. Okay, so sounds like we have everything that we were supposed to discuss today. Any other agenda items or things that need to come before the board today? Okay, hearing none, accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been
Second.
properly moved by Mr. Bravo, seconded by Mr. Alexander. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening, and see you on next Monday for our regularly scheduled board meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Everybody have a good evening.
You too.